All right, all right, all right. We are back. Listen, I don't have time for the 11-minute long intro, okay? I don't have time for all that. I see some content creators, their intro is an hour. I'm like, how? How? All right. But I do want to maybe get an intro that's like maybe a minute long. Okay. But the 11-minute long introduction, and then you do the live, and then after live, y'all, I can't do it. Okay. I got to get right to it. Ooh, that rhymed. Hello to everyone in the chat. Hello to I Am Queen Newton. Hello to Empress Kaya. Hello to Ross Pamoja, Angelica Diallo, Wisdom Over Feelings. Y'all came straight from the Nature Boy live. So what's up? Oh my goodness. I love that. I love the dedication. You're just as dedicated as I am. I Am Queen Newton says you are a busy lady today. I sure am. I'm already getting kind of tired, but I promised that I would cover this Roe v. Wade thing because everyone's been in so much a frush and a flush about it. So we need to talk about it, right? We need to talk about it. So give me a 1 in the chat if you're like, I don't even know what is going on with Roe v. Wade. I live, oh well, I almost said something. I don't know. Okay, give me a 1 in the chat if you're like, I don't even know what's going on with Roe v. Wade. Give me a 2 in the chat if you are on it and you're aware of what's been going on and you just want me to dive right into the legal commentary. Okay, so give me a 1 in the chats if you have no idea what's going on with Roe v. Wade. You maybe aren't even sure what Roe v. Wade is. Give me a 2 in the chat if you're like, no, I'm pretty informed and I'd like to just get right into the legal commentary. Okay, I'm seeing a 1 from Ross Pamoja. I'm seeing Doug and Empress Kaya with a 2. All right, Real Talk TV with the 2, Fab 540 with the 1. Okay, come on. Let's see. Let's get these votes rolling in because this is going to determine how I move forward. Okay? So give me a 1 in the chat if you are not even sure what Roe v. Wade is or what it's about and you need an explanation. A 2 in the chat if you're pretty informed and you would like me to just move on forward with the legal commentary. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of 2s. Somebody said, what's the number for being in between? No number for being in between. You got to choose. I'm seeing a lot of 2s. I do see, let me see how many 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4. I see about 4 1s. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick synopsis of what Roe v. Wade is because there are enough 1s there that I think we need to make sure that everybody is kind of on board with what's going on here. Okay, so Roe v. Wade is a case from, oh my goodness, how many years ago was that? Many. I think it was the 70s. Ooh, let's see. I'm going to tell you what year for the original. Whoa. Yeah, the 70s. Okay, so the original Roe v. Wade case was decided in 1973. Okay, it's considered to be a landmark case. Now, why is that? Because it was the first time that the Supreme Court had ever said, hey, listen, it is a woman's right to choose whether or not she wants to terminate a pregnancy. Okay, so that is Roe v. Wade from 1973. It gave women the right to terminate pregnancies if they so choose. Okay, now let's fast forward. There is a case that the Supreme Court is actually reviewing now. Now, is that case Roe v. Wade in itself? Not exactly, right? But it's more like a modern day Roe v. Wade, right? So the case that is currently under review is Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. Okay, I'm going to copy and paste that and put that in the chat for you. Copy, paste. Oh, wait, hold on. Are we moving along here? Can I? There we go. Okay. So that is the case that is currently under review. Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. Now you're wondering, well, why am I hearing about Roe v. Wade? You're hearing about Roe v. Wade because Roe v. Wade is the underlying precedent. Precedent. Okay, precedent. So Roe v. Wade is the underlying case law that says a woman has the right to terminate. So now you have this new case, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, in which it is being said, hey, according to Roe v. Wade, what Mississippi is doing is unconstitutional. Okay. So now your next question is, well, what is Mississippi doing? Okay. So Mississippi has a law which says that it is illegal to have a pregnancy termination after 15 weeks of pregnancy. So Mississippi is pretty much saying, listen, if you are already 15 weeks pregnant, you've gone too far along and you now cannot terminate the pregnancy. Okay. So the Supreme Court is deciding if that law in Mississippi is constitutional, right? If it comports with Roe v. Wade and if Roe v. Wade is okay, or if there's some overturning and adjusting that needs to happen. So now you're all caught up. All right. So for all my people who put a 1 in the chat, you should be all caught up now. Okay. Everyone should get Roe v. Wade and Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. Now, if you still have questions about either of those cases, drop another 1 in the chat and I'll revisit. Okay. But in the meantime, we're going to move forward. Okay. So here's what all the kerfuffle is about. So all of the kerfuffle and kerpuffle, you guys know I like those words. I have no idea why, is because the Supreme Court is drafting an opinion in Dobbs. And their opinion, not the published opinion, mind you, their draft was leaked. And people got all up in arms about the draft, pretty much saying that the draft looks to be an overturning of Roe v. Wade. Okay, so you have a lot of women's rights organization and feminist organizations that are totally up in arms about this leaked opinion. Now, let's bear in mind, okay, let's bear in mind what the Supreme Court is actually deciding. Because remember, thanks to the way that our media works, we have a lot of sensationalism. Because our media works based off of viewership, sensationalism happens. Okay, you're going to get things being dramatized, or dramatized is the word, right? Because they want the views, right? As the kids would say nowadays, they want the clout. And part of all of the up in arms in this Roe v. Wade thing is clout. Now, as we heard, the Supreme Court is not deciding if a woman can ever choose to terminate. Okay, remember that is not what they are reviewing. Okay, so let's go back to it. Listen to my words. They are writing an opinion in a case that is challenging Mississippi's ban on terminating a pregnancy after 15 weeks. So the Supreme Court is not even deciding if it's okay for a woman to ever terminate. That's not what they're discussing. They are discussing whether or not it is constitutional for the state of Mississippi to say, no, we will not allow a woman to terminate her pregnancy after 15 weeks. Okay? Now, if you're still in the mud a bit, if you're still murky, 4 weeks in every month, right? Okay, so when you're at 15 weeks. So when you're at 15 weeks, you're looking at almost 4 months into pregnancy. I want to put it in months so I can give you the visual. So the Supreme Court did not write a decision about whether or not women are ever permitted to ever terminate a pregnancy. And if you look in mainstream media, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing all of this. It's all because they want clicks and views. They need that to survive. That is not what is being discussed. What is being discussed is whether or not a woman who is almost 4 months pregnant should be permitted to terminate the pregnancy. All righty. Now that we got that, let's move forward. So, based upon the leaked decision, it looks as though the Supreme Court is saying that they believe it to be a state decision. Okay, so it looks as though the Supreme Court is saying we believe that each state has the right to regulate certain things when it comes to the lives of their citizens. And we believe that this type of issue, such as how far along can you terminate and et cetera, well, we believe that this type of issue is something that an individual state should be able to decide in regards to their citizens and their constituents. All right, we got a question from Doug. Doug says, it is states trying to pass bills that can terminate a baby after birth. Whoa. Oregon wanted to terminate babies up to 28 days after birth. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. Okay. Alrighty, so let's delve into what the Supreme Court allegedly said a little bit further. Okay, so I'm pulling it up here. All right, so allegedly, the Supreme Court is going to state, again, this is a leaked draft. So this is not a published decision. Okay, it's a leaked draft. So allegedly, the Supreme Court is going to say that they were wrong from the beginning, that Roe v. Wade was not correct because, again, states should have the right to decide as to whether or not a citizen in their jurisdiction can abort. Oh, I didn't want to use that word. Shoot. Can terminate a pregnancy and what the parameters of that termination should be. Okay. So I hope I'm trying to state this over and over and over again to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Okay. I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Again, they are not making a decision as to whether or not a woman should ever be permitted to terminate. The decision they are making is whether or not a woman should be permitted to terminate after 15 weeks. And based upon the draft that we saw, they're not saying yes or no, right? They're not saying right or wrong. They're saying each state should be able to make that decision for their jurisdiction. All right. Truth Strong says, is it really for their citizens or will people be able to travel to other states? Well, yes, people will be able to travel to other states, but technically they're making the decision for their citizens, right? That's technically who they're making the decision for. But we understand that from a practical level, if Mississippi bans it, but New York doesn't, someone could travel to New York and do it. Correct. But that doesn't negate that the Supreme Court is saying we believe that to be a state right. This is what they're allegedly saying in the leaked draft of the opinion, okay? Not a published opinion. And y'all, these opinions go through many drafts before they actually become an opinion, all right? Fab 540 says this has been grossly sensationalized. Yes, it has. Grossly sensationalized. Grossly sensationalized. Because again, when you look at what they're actually deciding, that's not what you're hearing. You're hearing people like, oh, they're taking away all of the women's rights. And well, no, not really. They're really just deciding if you can still terminate when you're 4 months, which 4 months. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Hello to this 504 girl. How are you, darling? All right. All right. So Doug says if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, it states with policies that end termination immediately. What do you mean, Doug? What do you mean by that? All right, so you all, now that I've given, mind you, it's not much to explain here. This has been, as Fab said, grossly sensationalized, y'all. Okay. So give me some questions in the chat. I'll go ahead and drop the link as well so you all can come up and ask me any questions you have if you want to join me. All right. StreamYard link is in the chat if you want to join me and ask me any questions. If not, just drop your questions in the chat. But yes, as you can see, by the fact that we've only been on for 15 minutes, grossly sensationalized. Grossly. First of all, this isn't even a published opinion yet, right? It's a draft. And second of all, they're not deciding on all terminations ever. Okay, that's not what's at hand. All right, Real Talk is here. Hello, Real Talk. What are your thoughts? Real Talk, we cannot hear you. Okay, so Real Talk left. I think maybe he or she was accidentally backstage. So anybody who wants to come backstage, um you're welcome to come. So Doug says it's some states with policies that are anticipating Roe v. Wade to be overturned, and they would eliminate termination altogether. Yes. So if it ends up being up to that state, then yeah, that state can say, hey, we're not going to allow termination of pregnancy here at all. Yes, they can do that. But again, it is 2022. There will be some states somewhere, probably New York and California and Oregon and, those and the like, right? That will still have pregnancy termination. And people will be able to travel elsewhere to terminate if that's what they want to do. All right, let me copy the link again. My phone died, so I can't go into my phone and pin anything, y'all. My phone is dead and it is what it is. I'm not even going to go put it on the charger. I secretly wish I didn't have a cell phone. That's another conversation because it just allows for far too much access. People have too much access to you. Hello, Real Talk. What are your thoughts?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I have a question.
Yes.
Um, when you say that it has been grossly sensationalized, first let me just say hello, hello. This is my second live in a row, hearing you. And I really enjoy listening to your content thus far. Um, so you you said that it's grossly been sensationalized. Um, what mainstream media has been saying is that the fear is not, the fear is not what the bill lays out, but what can be like a domino effect of passing this bill or correcting it or pulling it back. Is there, do you see any concerns there?
I don't. And the reason that I don't is because I understand how states' rights work. So, again, let's say that states like Texas and Mississippi and Alabama, right? Let's say they ban termination altogether. There will still be other places where termination is permitted. If you leave it up to the states, we know what's going to happen. Your liberal states are going to say, yes, you can come in here and terminate, and then your conservative states are going to say, no, you can't. So that's why I don't have this fear of any domino effect, because leaving it up to the states will just mean that some places will allow it and some won't.
Okay. Um, okay. Can I stay up for a little while because I
Oh,
have another? Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. You can stay. You can stay. And I want to address something I heard that I think goes to what Real Talk was saying about the domino effect. I heard people saying, well, what if a woman is financially challenged, which means that she cannot travel from, one state to another. She's not able to travel to another state to terminate her pregnancy. Then she ends up not being able to terminate. And so here we get into a very interesting conversation about the role of the government in the lives of its citizens. So remember that as we're always talking about with the Constitution, right? We have the right to life and liberty and this and that, right? But that does not include the right to be able to do certain things that are in the gray area. And so pregnancy and termination of pregnancy, it's in that gray. And the reason that it's in that gray is because you technically have more than one life involved. So you're always going to have pregnancy termination in the gray, because you're always going to have people who say, well, the mom has the right. But then you're always going to have people who say, well, the baby has the right. Because remember, you're in the gray because you're talking about more than one person. So there are some people that are saying the implications will be difficult for women who are financially disadvantaged. But again, I don't think that'll have much traction in regards to state rights. Hello, Kim. What would you like to say? Welcome to the stage.
Hi, Empowered Esquire, and hello to the chat. I just have a one question. Now, this case that you're talking about that involves um, the state of Mississippi, I believe you said.
Yes, it's
Um,
the state of Mississippi.
yes. Now, does this case specify anything in regards to circumstances? Meaning, if a woman was raped, or if it was a case of incest, or something of that nature? And I'll just step back and listen to the answer. Thanks.
That's an interesting question. So I'm looking it up now. Um, hmm. I don't see. Mm, so I can't tell. Let's put it that way. We're not aware of whether or not Mississippi's ban has any exceptions, which means we don't know if they have medical exceptions noted there, right? And we don't know if they have circumstantial exceptions noted in that ban. We're not sure. But I want to quickly say, as far as medical exceptions, I heard someone say the other day there is absolutely no case in which a woman would need to terminate a pregnancy for her own health. And I thought, ooh, and it was a man saying it, by the way. And I thought, ooh, that's wrong. Oh, goodness. And how could a man say that? How would a man know? So let me just inform everyone. I know for a fact that there are certain circumstances in which a doctor will say to a woman, this pregnancy jeopardizes your life. And so if you want to live, you should terminate. Okay? There are medical cases like that. That is a thing. But we don't know if the Mississippi ban has, if it speaks to that. We can't tell. We're not sure on that. All righty, let's see. Doug says, I don't know at Empowered Esquire. Some of these states are extremely on both spectrums. Yes. So you'll see that many of these states are extreme. I mean, you'll have states where a woman can terminate her pregnancy in her last trimester, meaning you have a fully formed human being that she could give birth to, and that human being would survive. But she can choose to have something injected into the placenta that kills the fetus and then give birth to a fetus that is already deceased. You have states that are doing that now. Okay. And then you also have states where you really cannot get a pregnancy termination at all. So yes, you do have states on both very opposite sides of the spectrum.
Um, I have another question.
Go ahead.
So is there I don't know, like, is there some kind of legal uh dilemma in having states choose or get to choose that what is legal and what is illegal, and when it comes to the Roe v. Wade decision? Is there like, some larger dilemma that can arise?
So that's open to interpretation. So back in 1973, they said there was, right? In 1973, they said, no, a woman has the right under the US Constitution to decide what she does with her body. And we believe that that includes the ability to terminate a pregnancy, right? That's what they said in 1973. But that can change. And from the leaked decision that we see, it looks like what they're saying now is each individual state has to maintain some level of right when it comes to what happens in their jurisdiction and what doesn't. And because we are in the gray, as I said, the gray being this is more than one being involved. So that is why particularly with termination of pregnancy, it's always so gray, because it depends on whether or not you are interpreting the extra being there as a life or as just, a zygote, right? Just something in the woman's uterus. It depends on that interpretation. And that interpretation hinges everything. Because if you decide that the being that is inside that woman's uterus is a person, then that person also has the right to life. But If you decide that it's not a person, it's just a zygote and it's just in her uterus, then she has the right to do, with her body as she so pleases. So this is a gray area. And back in the 1970s, they said the Constitution applied here, but it looks like that might be overturned.
Do you think that someone getting a going to terminate a child in one state who comes from another state, do you think there'll ever be a situation where they could be charged?
That's interesting. I don't think so. I'm going to tell you why. So let's say Mississippi has a ban on terminating pregnancies, and a woman from Mississippi goes to New York, because as you can see, what Doug said, and Doug is correct, by the way. In the state of New York, you can terminate full term baby, last trimester, right? Um, so let's say a woman in Mississippi decides, you know what, I'm kind of far along here, so I'm going to go ahead and go to New York. Now, who would know? Who would alert Mississippi that she's done that, right? That's the first thing. And then let's say someone does alert Mississippi. Mississippi really wouldn't be able to charge her with any crime, because where she went to go and terminate, what she did was legal there. So the only time that you would have somebody getting charged is if they had an illegal termination in a jurisdiction where you're not permitted to terminate.
Okay.
Right. Okay, welcome to the stage, filmmaker Dean. What do you got to say?
I was on the other panel. Again, this is my first day actually coming out of the chat onto these things. So again, I'm inspired by these conversations. My question is, like with the executive branch, the president, one president comes in, makes a thing a law, he changes everything. The next president comes behind him and changes it back and back. It's like a tennis match. And then we see now the judges are kind of sort of doing that. What kind of checks or balances is in there to make sure these judges that have agendas actually, don't just get in there and, like, according to Republicans or Democrats, just change stuff instead of on law according to their political situation? Is there any oversight of that can stop and say, like, this judge is doing it because he's a Republican, or this judge is doing it because he's Democratic, instead of going back and forth? Because it seems like with the president, everything is like, when one president says yes, the other president comes in and changes everything. Are we going to start seeing that with the judges now?
So judges are supposed to be impartial. Okay, so our understanding of what a judge is supposed to be, notice I said supposed to be because everybody's human. Right. A judge is supposed to be impartial. They are not supposed to be politically based in their decisions. Now, what we understand is that judges do tend to bring their ideology to their decision making and to their interpretation of the law. Is that always supposed to happen? No, but it does. So because ideologically they're not supposed to be politically charged, there really isn't any method that, quote unquote, protects the judiciary branch from that. But I will say this: the judiciary branch has its own built-in protection. And I'm going to tell you what that is. That's lifetime appointment. That's a lifetime appointment. So if Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson or Justice Scalia or Justice Thomas says something you don't like, it doesn't matter. You're not voting for them. They are in that seat. They are on that bench until they die, unless they do something impeachable. So although there's no law, or regulation necessary that can say, oh, well, necessarily that says they can't implement their own ideology, right? There's nothing there in black and white. We know that it's not as likely. It's not as likely that you have judges just implementing whatever they want, right? Because they don't have to be accountable to voters. So what judges are supposed to do is interpret the law. And that's why they're given lifetime appointments, especially SCOTUS, because if they didn't have lifetime appointments and they actually had to be elected, then they would be more subjected to the whims of the people, because they would say, well, I need to go with whatever's popular now so that I can get reelected, right? So the lifetime appointment is supposed to cushion them from having to please anyone. It's
That's what I was thinking, but like every time they're presented on television or in the media, it's always like, well, we have these are the Republican judges and these are the ones that are picked by the Democrat judges. And it seems obvious and whatnot, like when they having these hearings, like, okay, we got the Democrat when they assume that they're gonna do, be liberal, and the conservatives assume that. But again, I still agree with the lifetime appointment, because that when the Republicans get mad at them for not voting, they can't do nothing to them. So I agree with that, but I just just like I wonder, when it comes to stacking the court and whatnot, like if you got so many Republican judges, are they going to just vote a certain way just because of that? That I always worry about stuff like that.
I hear your concern, and many people say that. And I will also add this whole thing about Democrat and Republican when it comes to judges, that's a recent thing. Okay. It's a recent thing that judges are so open about their ideology. If you go back to the 40s and 50s, you didn't have judges being that open about their ideology. Judges were a lot more impartial back then. But mind you, we had a lot of other things going on in the country, right? But
Right.
ideology wise, judges kept it more quiet what their personal ideology was. They were not as open with personal ideology as the judges of today. But again, thank goodness that our Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. Because if
Yes.
you think that they are biased now, if they had to be elected in, if they had to be voted in, you would really see what bias is, right?
That's
Because
true.
you would have them just doing whatever they think most people want, as opposed to interpreting the law. And quite frankly, again, this decision, it's not the um monumental game changer that the media is making it. They need you to watch and click on their stuff. It's really not. Again, if one state says you can't do it, you can do it in another state, right? It's not, and allowing states to control. And again, we're not even talking about termination in general, people. Remember, we are talking about terminating at 4 months pregnant. We're not even saying, they're not even saying that you can't ever terminate at all. So again, a lot of this is just people that are taking it and turning it into this whole, and people are so invested in making things dramatic because that's how you get attention. Every time you view something in this modern day society, you have to remember that it is probably being made to sound 10 times worse than it actually is to get your attention. That's with everything, because attention is currency nowadays.
But look, let me ask this last question. Is it still a law, like like parents that know they're gonna be bad parents, or can't you can just drop your kid off at the store, not the store, but at the fire department when it's a newborn. You say, you know what, I changed my mind. I don't want to be a mom, and they don't ask you any questions. I forget what they call that, but is that still a law, or not law, but is that still a practice wherein you can drop them at the fire department and no questions are asked, and they place the child in the system?
So I have heard of that, and I think there are still, mind you, it's very old, as you said, but I think there are still some jurisdictions where yes, you can still do that. You can still, with no consequences, just relinquish your child to law enforcement or a fire department or wherever, and the child will be taken on as a ward of the state. Now, of course, we know that the women's rights advocates say that it's unfair, right, to force a woman to actually go through with the pregnancy and then give up the baby, as opposed to allowing her to terminate. But again, this case is not termination in general. It is termination at 4 months pregnant, right? 15 weeks, so 4 months ish. So we have to remember what we're talking about. We're not talking about a woman who cannot ever terminate. We're talking about a woman who enters her almost fourth month of pregnancy and then, for whatever reason, decides that she now wants to terminate. And yeah, maybe if you get that far along, you may have to go to another state. But it's definitely not the level that it's being made to be.
Plus that second trimester. I mean, come on, you had some decisions to make the first 3 months.
I mean, as I said, if you get to that point, you may need to, yeah, you may need to go if they do this, right? If they go through with all this and you get to that point, maybe you do need to go to a different jurisdiction and then complete your termination there. But it is nowhere near the level that they are making it out to be. And again, we have to remember we're in the gray. And if we don't acknowledge both sides of the argument, then we're remiss, because what do we consider that second being to be? And that is why I think the SCOTUS is trying to hand it over to states, right? Because they're acknowledging that. They're acknowledging that, listen, a state has the right to think that that second being is an actual person. And so if your state thinks that that being is a person, you have the right to think so. And if your state thinks that being isn't a person, then you have the right to think so. They are embracing, from this draft that we see, the gray, and allowing states to decide what they deem that being to be.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Why do you think this decision or rollback? Why do you think this is even an issue at this point? Like, why have they decided to even consider dialing this back?
Well, remember, this is brought to SCOTUS by the petitioner. So it's not like SCOTUS, chooses to review this. So for those of you who don't know, the Supreme Court receives, goodness, over 7,000, sometimes even upwards towards 10,000 petitions, right, per quarter. And they don't choose all of those cases. They only choose about 7 to 80 cases out of, that big cluster, and they choose them based upon, like, okay, which questions are the most important. So again, it's not even them deciding that they want to discuss that. It's just them looking at that question and saying, uh-oh, that's really important, we need to address that. So it is either Dobbs, and again, I didn't read the petition, but I believe that Dobbs is the person who petitioned SCOTUS because she wanted to have, she or he wants to have this ban in Mississippi overturned. So it is the petitioner that's asking the Supreme Court to look at it. And then the Supreme Court is saying, okay, well, we'll take a look at it. So that is how we're at the point that we're at now.
Thank you for that.
May I ask a question, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kim. Go ahead. Sure.
Yes, Kim.
May I? Now, some of the things, I mean, I understand what you're saying about things being sensationalized and kind of being overwrought, but some of the things that you hear are actually quite frightening, in my opinion. For example, I have heard people talking about things like banning contraception. Because
That's not what the Supreme Court is deciding, though, Kim. The Supreme Court isn't deciding on banning contraception, and they couldn't do that based upon this decision.
Okay. So that's the sensationalism part.
Yeah.
So that's the part that's scaring people, I think, because, I mean, my goodness, you're banning contraception, theoretically anyway. I think that's pretty ridiculous. And they were even talking about the possibility of banning contraception between a married couple. So if I had a husband and he and I decided together as husband and wife, we're going to do this, use contraception because we don't want to get pregnant at this moment, then that could potentially be against the law. It just seems kind of crazy.
So,
but those are the things that's being said in the media.
Right.
So,
and
yeah, that's the part that's kind of scary.
Because that's not what the Supreme Court is deciding. That is if the Supreme Court says that this ban on having a termination. So let's say the Supreme Court says, hypothetically, yes, Mississippi can have a ban on termination after 15 weeks. That does not then give Mississippi the right to ban all contraception. Those two are not the same thing. Those two are
they're not
the same thing. So
they are not the same thing.
Again, that's the sensationalism, right? That's the part where they need the clicks and the views, and so they're just kind of running away with it. Nowhere near the same thing.
Now insurance people are talking about that, having that conversation. Like, we're not going to pay for it, but you can do it. But the insurance companies now, and certain companies are saying, I remember they were in court about that, saying like, a lot of pro-life organizations and companies saying, well, we're not going to pay for it or cover it on your insurance and whatnot.
Cover
And
which? I cover the abortion or cover
the,
contraception?
the contraceptives and stuff
Oh,
like that.
wow.
They were
Okay.
like, we're not going to pay for your like Plan Bs or your IUD or whatever it was. Like it was a big thing a couple of years ago, a big argument with the insurance companies and the pro lifers and whatnot, saying like, well, you can try, you can do whatever you want, but we're not going to pay for it. We're not going to insure that. And I don't know if you probably heard about that or discussed that on a previous show, but like that was a big thing with the insurance company saying, we're not going to participate in this and stuff like that.
So
All
if
right.
you're using your insurance to get to pay for example, birth control pills, they're saying some of these insurance companies are saying we're not going to cover
We're,
that. You're on your own.
and they went to court over that a couple of years ago. I forget the case and who it
Uh
was,
huh.
but that was the main thing and whatnot. They were like saying we're not covering the pills, the contraceptives, any of that, And it was a company that was doing that, and they were in the news for it. And the insurance company was saying we're not going to cover that, and
Wow.
that's what, and insurance companies are stopping coverage on a whole lot of stuff now and whatnot, and that they're going to court for and stuff like that. So, like for example, like pre-existing conditions was a big thing, and the government had to step in on
Hmm.
that as well.
All
Felicia.
right, so let me.
It,
Oh wait, I'm gonna let you.
Interesting.
I'm gonna let you. Come back, jump back in, real talk. But let me just shout out to peace, profits, respect, and knowledge. Thank you for the compliment. I don't know if peace profits. I'm gonna assume that this is a male. He says, "I wish more judges thought like you. Your analysis is well reasoned, fair, balanced, knowledgeable, and objective. Thank you." And that's what our judges should be. They should be impartial and balanced, right? But we know that we live in a different time. And before I let Real Talk jump in, I want to mention because Dean and some others were talking about insurance. So remember that again, the reason why your employer offers you insurance is because of federal regulations, right? Federal regulation that you have to have insurance. And if you're a company that has a certain number of employers, you have to offer them insurance. But it's not federally regulated what your insurance has to entail. So yes, your employer has to give you insurance. Does your in I can't talk today. Does your employer have to give you insurance that covers contraceptives? No. And there are some insurance plans right now that don't cover contraceptives, and it's not because they have any moral obligation against it. They just don't. Go ahead, real talk.
okay. So, first, do you go by Felicia or do you go by Empowered Esquire?
Well, you're welcome to call me either one, whichever one is more comfortable for you.
Okay. And then secondly, Felicia, if that's appropriate, I think I think we should have like a Mythbusters because like filmmaker and Kim are pretty much alluding to is that there are platforms on either side both sides that are I guess you would call it fear mongering and creating alternate narratives, and so nobody really knows exactly what is truth and what is an exaggeration of the truth.
I agree with you, real talk. I may do a Mythbuster series because there's just so much out there and there's so much just gossip really, especially around things like this because no one really wants to take the time to read what's going on, and I think that's what's happening. And mind you, I'm not judging people because my job is to read these things, right? Like, although I don't practice in this particular realm, it's part of what I do. But if I were, I don't know, let's say an engineer, would I be sitting around reading Dobbs and Roe v. Wade? Of course not. So a lot of people, they have their own jobs, their own lives. It has nothing to do with the law. And so they're just kind of watching TV and listening to the news and they don't really know. And that also goes with a lot of these sensationalized laws, like the Florida Don't Say Gay bill. That was a whole big thing. And then when I started to look into it, I realized that it wasn't anywhere near about what everyone online was saying that it's about. So I think I'm definitely going to consider that.
And I was reading something too that said something like the Supreme Court ruled that private employers who hold religious and moral objections to birth control can be exempt from providing like the no cost contraception to employees through, I think it's a health insurance as mandated by the Affordable Care Act. So that was a big thing.
Mm. Again, they're not ever required to give you certain types of coverage. It's just you're required to have coverage. That's it.
Right.
The details of your coverage is up to that company and what plans they choose to offer. So, yes. And as I said, there are some companies that don't cover contraceptives, and it's not a moral thing. They just don't. All righty. So, any other questions from anybody on the panel?
I have one last question and then I'm
Yeah.
gonna go.
Yeah.
But first I want to say this was awesome. Like you're really good at
You're
what you do.
welcome.
I'll be back. I already subscribed. So yeah. But my last question is how much of a person's personal or the lawmakers or the judges, the Supreme Court justices in this case, how much of their personal ideology do you think went into this? Because I've noticed that there appears to be like a I want to say a push uh, by people who are religious to invoke their religious beliefs into the law. What are your thoughts on that? And how much of it do you think is happening?
All right. My thoughts on how much I would say in recent years, judges use a lot more of their ideology than previous years. As I said, I think that back in, your 40s and 50s, you had judges who were using less of their ideology, as I said, considering some of the other things we had going on, right? And especially around the time of like a Thurgood Marshall, it was expected that you not use your personal ideology. And in recent years, I'd say in the past 20 or so years, we've veered very far away from that. Now, a lot of these appointees, a lot of these SCOTUS justices that are recently appointed, we expect for them to implement the ideology of whoever they were appointed by. So I think Dean said it earlier, we expect Ketanji Brown Jackson to be Democratic. We expected Barrett to be more conservative. So we're on the opposite end now, where we almost expect these judges to implement their ideology. And I do think we are seeing that. I think we are seeing the judges that we have in place now implementing their ideology in their opinions. Although theoretically, that is not really what is supposed to be happening. Any other questions from anyone on the panel?
What is how do you say her name again? The Supreme Court.
Ketanji Brown Jackson, I think. I may be switching around the last
Yeah,
name. But.
Justice Ketanji. What is she doing now? But like, does she just have to wait until he decides to leave? Like, did he, the position that she's going to take? Does she got to wait for that judge to like step down? What if she does in the interim? Is she allowed to look at cases like this, and give an opinion on it, or?
So, to my knowledge, Breyer hasn't stepped down yet. And being that Breyer isn't like ill, or, well, we don't know of him being ill, right? So, being that we don't know of him having any medical reason for needing to like step down immediately, what will more than likely happen is that he will complete this session. Meaning, when they close out their year and the Supreme Court says, okay, we've done all of our business for this term, this year, then more than likely he'll vacate the seat and have Brown Jackson step in. And again, that's because he's not ill or injured or anything that would mean that he has to leave immediately.
Right. Did he retire or something? He didn't give us a date or anything, right? He just said he's
going to retire. Yeah. So he will be retiring and she will be taking his seat. And as I mentioned, I actually did an entire video on, I don't know if you've seen that, Dean, but you should check it out. You would love it. And let me tell everyone in the chat as well, I did an entire video on Ketanji Brown Jackson, on her career and we talked about what we can expect from her on the bench based upon her career. So go check that out. That you would really, really love it. Not to add to what you were saying, Ketanji Brown Jackson clerked for Breyer.
Right.
So it's really looking like Breyer held the seat for her. And I know that's a controversial thing to say. Okay.
Hey,
So allegedly, right?
tag her
But
in. Hey, now.
there's just too much coincidence there with her clerking for him and now she's taking his seat.
Right.
So yeah, I did a video on that. So you can go check it out. All right. Any other questions from anyone on the panel or anyone in the chat? All righty. So Kimberly Callahan says that video was really interesting. Yes, y'all, go check out my Ketanji Brown Jackson video. We delved into her career. It was a really, really good conversation, very enlightening. All righty. So listen, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I'd like to thank all of my esteemed panel members that joined me here today. Your contribution really made a difference. All righty. So thank you for joining me for another installment of Empowered Esquire TV. You bring something unique to this world, to this channel, to my life, and I love you for it. I hope you've been empowered by the legal conversation that we had today. And what's up to the replay gang? Tell me, replay gang, how do you feel about this Mississippi ban? Do you think, and again, this is your humble opinion, right? Do you think that Mississippi is out of line for saying, hey, once you reach past 15 weeks, it's a no-go? Or do you think, hey, they're well within their rights to do so, and I think that that's something that's reasonable? All right, you let me know. See you soon.